am a certified coach out of Jersey. And I am a certified coach out of Jersey. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, but we're also going to talk a little bit about, how the things that trigger us in our lives, because to me, a lot of these topics are overlapping. It's not a one size fits all, but it's kind of an overlapping thing. So again, I appreciate everybody for being here. But one of the first areas that I kind of talked about and I shared on last week, but I just want to kind of hit this real quick is when you look at emotional intelligence, there's like probably 12. Some areas tell you that there's 12 different things that you have to look out for. I use just the basic 5. And you can use the 12, but I mean, I just generally use the 5 because I like to keep it kind of compact and to the point. And the first thing that is critical with our emotional intelligence is a level of self-awareness. And self-awareness is very, very important because, and one of the main points that I was thinking about when I wrote about this was the humility when it concerns self-awareness is important. And why is it important? Because if you are an individual and you're living life and you're going through your experiences, you're going to have different people that are going to come throughout your life that are going to possibly bring you a level of wisdom, a level of knowledge concerning some topic or something. And if we're not open and we're not in a receptive place, thank you, Renee, for tapping it or for being active in YouTube. If you're not open and you're not in a place where you're receptive to information, then that's going to be something that's going to be a hindrance and a stumbling block somewhere in the future. So being humble enough to hear someone that's a wise person. And why is that important? Because there are things that other individuals can see about us that we can't necessarily see about ourselves at times. And so sometimes it takes, and I often say this, and this is just my rule, it doesn't have to be your rule, but I often say that if you have numerous people that say the same thing about you, and they're in different areas, like you go over your parents' house and one of your siblings will say something about you, you go to work and a fellow coworker says the same thing about you, and you go to the gym and somebody else says the same thing about you, if they're all saying, you know what, whenever I'm talking, I feel like you want me to shut up so you can say what you have to say. If they're all saying the same thing, there's a real good chance. And not always, because nothing is 100% sure or true, but there's a real good chance that maybe that's something that I need to work on. You need to work on, whoever, we need to work on it. So self-awareness is critical because we can only see ourselves to an extent, and then we have an image of ourselves of who we think we are. This is just the way we're made as people, because and so this is why being open and receptive to outside information, not from everybody. I cannot stress this enough. I'm not open to information from everybody because I want to know that the people that are giving me information about myself are, first of all, people that are working on themselves. And then second of all, people that can see their own faults, because if you can tell me something about myself, I should be able to come back to you later on in life, 6 months, a year, whatever, and be able to say something to you. It should be a mutually beneficial exchange between both parties. We're talking about emotion and we're talking about intelligence. Okay. Part of your emotional intelligence is you're not going to give access. I'm not going to give access to individuals who I don't feel like have proven themselves that I should be able to, that I'm going to allow them to give me feedback on myself if I know that they're not a person that's working on themselves. If I know that they're not a person, or in other words, they have to be a person that is in the energy of that they actually care about you when they're giving you this information, not just someone just freely giving information, because there's a lot of information out here. So the first thing is being humble enough to hear. Am I humble enough to hear different things that are coming on, that are coming and going on around me? Second thing is part of getting to a place of emotional intelligence and the self-awareness phase of it is isolation. So the first thing would be humbleness. The second thing would be isolation. Am I able to isolate myself? So what that isolation means is, am I able to separate myself for a little extended periods of time where I can get silent, where I can maybe do some meditation, where I can do some visualization, where I can do some breathing work, where I can do some praying, where I can do some different things to get myself in a place, because part of us receiving any type of revelation is going to require us to get into a higher state. So that's going to require some form of practice that we have or something that we're doing. But the point with isolation is that isolation is one of the keys to gaining a lot of information and a lot of downloads to yourself. It's where you're going to start doing a lot of writing. You're going to blow through notebooks like this with ease. I blow through notebooks because I'm always writing because of the isolation and because there's nobody around me. Instead of spending the time talking to people, except for on these lives, I'm writing about things that come to my mind, things that I'm thinking about, things that I need to do a deeper dive on, and I need to consider. I appreciate everybody that's active in the chats. Thank each and every one of you. So the third thing is, after you're receiving all this, because the first step is humbleness. Am I humble enough to hear? That's the question that I'm asking myself. Am I humble? Am I in a humble enough state to hear something that someone else has, or that someone else is saying to me? Then after what I'm hearing, what they're saying, am I willing to isolate? Am I willing to get to a separate place alone and start kind of pondering things, going through my process, whatever that looks like for me? And then after I go through this, or after I'm going through this journey, then it's a process of honesty. But the honesty is first, because many times we expect honesty from others. But the first part of honesty is us being honest with ourselves, us doing a true evaluation. This is why the isolation is so important. This is why the humility is so important, because in order to do a true evaluation, a true honest assessment of self, it's going to take being honest, because there's things about us, things about me, things about you, things about all of us that people are going to say that we might not like. But if we want to change it, we want to be better, we want to progress, we want to move ahead in our lives. This stuff that I'm sharing with you, this stuff is important for your business life as well as your intimate and personal relationships, because it's about how do I interact and how do I deal with other people? Am I able to interact and to be someone that's not so triggered? Because, and this is why I'm talking about triggered too, because if we're not in the right state when someone says something to us, if we won't be humble enough, so automatically, if I'm not humble enough to hear what you got to say, I'm going to be triggered. I'm going to be in my emotion. I'm going to be pissed, right? Because that's part of how it works. Because we understand that when we're triggered, it represents that something came from the outside that has affected something that was in us, that was sitting dormant, that got reawakened, which was something from our past. So part of this whole process is the isolation, the humility, but the third thing is honesty. Can I receive the honesty from myself? Can I do a real true assessment of self without measuring myself on the curve? You know how sometimes when everybody would fail a class, have you ever been in one of those classes, like when you were in like junior high or something? Everybody fooled around. Everybody failed it. Everybody failed the test. The teacher said, "You know what? I'm gonna grade this this test on the curve." Y'all, anybody ever did that, or anybody ever been a part of that? Or maybe it was just me, because I was a little bad behind. So anybody else, put your hand up in the chat. Let me know if you've been ever experiencing anything like that. And so part of that was the teacher didn't want to look bad, because if the whole class failed, then that's a reflection back on the teacher. Okay. Because it's one thing if one or two of them jokers fail, but the whole class, really? Is this what we're doing? Where everybody's failing now? Everybody's failed the class or the test? Stop playing, y'all. So the isolation, so let me stay focused. The honesty. Okay. And so honesty is the evaluation of self, not from a place of being lenient on self. I don't evaluate myself from being lenient. I evaluate myself from a place of desiring excellence. I don't want to be average. Average, to me, average is the best of the worst and the worst of the best. Somewhere in the middle, you're just kind of floating around. You just, la. No, that's not good enough. Strive towards excellence. Whatever you do it with all of your might, all of your strength, all of your power. Fourth thing, discover what are the things that you really like. Part of that isolation is going to allow you to actually really get to a place of this self-discovery. This is what this is all about. This self-awareness is the main thing, is self-discovery, a rediscovering of self. There's many things that go on in life, and depending on who you're around, and depending on how strong your self-image is, and your where you are emotionally, you could get lost in your environment a little bit. So it's getting back, to me, it's about getting back to that place, getting back to that center, getting back to that place where you're supposed to be aligned, discovering self. I often tell people that, during my time of aloneness and isolation, it's, first of all, it revealed to me, because I had been writing a little bit at that point before this, but when I really was alone, what it did was it started showing me different gifts and abilities that I had that were laying dormant within me that I didn't even realize I had. The ability to write poetry, the ability to write, because as you start writing about where you are emotionally, it's going to start opening up different things, And one of the things that I said, that I'm a person that I love music, and that was always a general, broad statement that I would say. I would just paint this broad statement, but by this time of isolation, now I understand that I don't only love music, but what I really love is I love melodies. And the melodies don't have to be in any particular music genre. It's just I love beautiful melodies, and I love instruments and people that are skillful in what they do. Fifth thing, part of self-awareness is being able to identify your triggers. This is why this is so important. This first one out of the 5 that I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over this one tonight because I've already been on here for like 10, 15 minutes. And so the first part is understanding what are the things that trigger me. You won't know the things that trigger you if you're not willing to be aware of who you are. If you're not willing to be, first of all, the thing, like I said, is humble. If you're not willing to take a little bit of time and isolate. I'm not saying isolate forever. Get some quiet time. Get away from everybody. Turn everything off. Put some high vibration frequency music on. Maybe burn a candle. Maybe take a bath. Get some quiet time alone, because that's part of your maintenance. That's part of you maintaining who you are and your self maintenance. Because there's got to be a time and season where you're taking care of self, where you're doing something to kind of pamper yourself, take care of yourself. And that's why I talked about the isolation and the honesty and the discovery of self. Okay, so the 5th thing again is triggers. What are our triggers? Many of us know maybe 1 or 2 triggers, but there's different things that trigger us. And in order to identify those triggers and really deal with them, it's a process of actually seeing what is this thing? Why does this thing keep coming up? Why does this keep popping up in my life? Because triggers aren't something that just happens once. It happens every time somebody throws a shoe in that corner. Because we're in that corner, we're right? Every time they throw a shoe in that corner, it's right? Because it's something that's going to affect us internally. We're going to feel it in our body. You're going to feel it, right? So what are my triggers? And I mentioned this last week. When triggers come, all it is bringing an awareness. It's like taking a spotlight and it's bringing an awareness onto something that is going on within us. Because when you think about it, there's something on the outside that someone said or did. It's within our environment, somewhere around us, or something that was said or whatever. Something that was on the outside of us has come to us, and just because it came to me and you, it does not mean that it should be something that's within me that's affecting me and affecting the way I act, affecting my behavior. Because my behavior is my responsibility. The way I act, that's my responsibility, regardless of what you say, regardless of what you do. Your actions should not dictate the way I'm going to respond, because I have enough control of who I am as a person. This is why we're talking about emotional intelligence. Being emotional, but have an intelligence. Being emotional, but having intelligence. Not just being emotional, because when we're emotional, any of us and all of us on these lives, when we're just emotional, we're going to make bad choices. We're going to make bad decisions. The bad decisions I made as a young person were always predicated, they were always based upon me just moving based upon emotion, instead of counting up the cost and looking at this whole thing. Looking at the full picture of what are the possibilities, And so I'm going to end this first part with I am grateful and thankful that I am self-aware and willing to accept the things that I see. That's the affirmation for this little part of this segment of this lesson. I am grateful and I'm thankful that I'm willing to accept the things that I see about myself and willing to change. That's my thought for you for today. Appreciate it, every single one of you. I'm going to continue to go live on the TikTok. And I'm going to end this on the YouTube. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with me on TikTok. And if you got any